Today on The Big Show, we're hanging out with Tim Wendel and talking about his brand new book, Down to the Last Pitch. It's all about the great World Series of 1991 with the Twins and the Braves. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about the 91 season and how Ricky Henderson broke a record that year and how Nolan Ryan upstaged Ricky later that same day. Let's do it.
Yeah. You feel it, baby? I get two.
Hey, it's your good friend. It's your pal. It's your compadre. It's TC, everybody. What's going on the Big Show today? Well, first off, we got to pay proper attribution to Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. My assistant, Christina, was telling me, hey, I like that you broke out a little bit of the Master of Puppets by Metallica when you did the Masters show. So today, I'm going back into the archive, finding out what was the number one song back in October of 1991, because we're talking 1991 with Tim Wendel on the show today. And it was Good Vibrations by the great Mark Wahlberg, a.k.a. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. So there you go. Hey, welcome to the Big Show. Of course, we're here every Monday through Friday. And for me, it's all about having a laugh, making some new friends like Tim today, and not being afraid to call the ridiculous in sports ridiculous, because you know there's a lot of people who are so damn uptight in sports and in life these days. No, not allowed here on the Big Show. Of course, make sure you swing on by Sportsnaut.com. It is the juggernaut of unfiltered sports love. That's sports as in, well, sports, and not as in you're the juggernaut, baby. If you're interested, you can shoot me an email at tc@sportsnaut.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. It's HeyTC. That's right. Just hey, and then TC. T as in twin, C as in cities. Finally, before we get to Tim, thanks for listening to the show. If you're digging on my vibe and the wonderful guests that have been coming on the Big Show, hey, got to ask you a favor. Subscribe to the show on iTunes. And one more favor, if I can ask it. Tell a friend or a loved one about the show. I would appreciate it, and I thank you in advance. So what's going on the Big Show today? Well, we're talking with Tim Wendel, who is the author of 11 books. I don't think I could write one book, Tim. How have you done 11 already?
Oh, you know, they put the pressure on me. TC, you could do a book, no problem. I'll come back up there. We'll do a book together. Be no worries.
Very nice. Tim's latest book is Down to the Last Pitch, which is right in my sweet spot. How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves gave us the best World Series of all time. Now, as a Minneapolis boy, or Twin Cities kid, I guess you could say, I would have to concur, but that's a bold statement to call it the greatest World Series of all time.
It's time to draw a line in the sand on this, TC. I mean, I've been getting some pushback. I don't know where I was a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said, isn't this a little extravagant? And I went, no, come on, it's at least on the short list. But I think it gets forgotten at times because, it was in two relatively small markets. But I think when you look at the series, 4 games coming down to the last pitch, 3 games going into extra innings, including the climactic Game 7 up there in the old Metrodome. In fact, I was going by the Metrodome the other day on the light rail, and I saw it was torn down. I started to cry, and the people on the light rail didn't know what to do. But it's an epic series, and I don't think it gets enough respect. So I think to get some respect, you gotta put it out there, and some of the players, as you well know, I mean, Twins, Jack Morris, Kirby Puckett, Gene Larkin, Ken Herbeck, and then over on the other side with the Atlanta Braves, guys like Smoltz, Glavine, Bobby Cox, Dave Justice, and two among their ranks going into the Hall of Fame this summer, and Tom Glavine, the pitcher, and Bobby Cox, the manager. So it's certainly there, and I'm trying to get it a little bit out of the shadows and get it right up there with some of the great series where it belongs.
Was Kirby Puckett, when you look back in time, is Kirby Puckett or Tom Glavine going to be the best player to have played in the 1991 World Series?
Wow. Well, they'll both be in the Hall of Fame, obviously. I think, in a lot of ways, I think 91 put Puckett in the Hall of Fame. I think just the way he rose to the occasion in Game 6, even though one of the things I tease out and down to the last pitch, TC, is that, legend has it in Game 6, game tied, going to the bottom of the 11th, everybody's going bananas in the Metrodome. He's going up looking for a homer. And the conversation I had with Chili Davis, who was arguably his best friend on that team and the guy in the on-deck circle, Kirby was going up to bunt and actually was going to try to steal second, and Chili Davis was going to drive him in. And Davis is the one who kind of argued him out of that, said, Puck, that's a bad idea. And so they talked some more and kind of put together a game plan against Charlie Leibrandt, who was then relieving for the Braves. It's funny, I think you're comparing two very different careers in a way. I mean, Puckett certainly, from a Minnesota standpoint, has a long career, but it is cut short by the eye situation. From a national perspective, I think he really comes on board pretty much in 91. That's where he really steps into people's living rooms, not only with that homer in Game 6, but the great catch up against the plexiglass in left center field and driving in, I guess, 3 runs, 2 runs? And Glavine is more of over a long period of time, and I think benefited from the standpoint that, at least for a long time, the Braves you could pick them up anywhere in the country. They were America's team, and he was known for kind of the change-up on the outside corner, try to hit it, and was very much, did it over the long haul. I think Kirby was much more of a comet through the sky.
You mentioned that the small markets of Atlanta and Minneapolis, though technically aren't both of those markets, by my quick check, in the top 15 markets in the United States?
Mm-hmm. But, you know how it works in baseball. I mean, I kind of ran into it when I first suggested this book, coming off the book I did summer of '68 about the Tigers and the Cardinals, and I got some pushback. I mean, the people kind of wanted, give us another Red Sox book or another Yankee book or another Dodger book. And then, there's been some great ones out there, and I enjoy those teams, but, it's kind of tend to spread things around a little bit. And I think, if anything, people just seem to be happy in these markets that, granted, they may be high, low, but they feel like they've been ignored. I mean, we saw it, even though I loved parts of, say, Ken Burns' PBS series, some of the criticism you heard was, okay, where are the Twins in this? Where are the Cardinals in this? And I think it's a well-founded criticism. Baseball is a national game. It's not just something that hangs out on either coast in the really, really big media markets.
A bunch of bastards in New York, Boston, and Los Angeles. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of commandeered all this for a while. And I'm trying to pull it back a little bit. I'm sticking up for flyover country here, TC, and I hope to rally the troops.
There you go. You can follow Tim on Twitter. It's Tim_Wendel, WENDEL. And the book is Down to the Last Pitch, How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves Gave Us the Best World Series of All Time. You can find it on Amazon and any other slightly competent bookseller out there, whether it's brick and mortar or online. One of the things that you guys go through, or that you go through in the book, is the 1991 season. I want to get back to the Twins in a little bit, but I want to talk about a little bit about the 91 season, because on my birthday, May 1st, 1991, I'll always remember this. Ricky Henderson, of course, broke Lou Brock's record, and he gave the antithesis of the Lou Gehrig speech after breaking the record. And then later that night, Nolan Ryan threw his 7th no-hitter, I believe it was. Yeah. And I thought that Nolan Ryan, who I love, and, I like Ricky Henderson. Henderson was a great player, but that speech was just such a turnoff. And that, I love a guy like Nolan Ryan, who was still doing it at age 43, 42 then, or something like that.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, that he would go out and kind of steal Ricky Henderson's thunder after that annoying speech. Can you talk about that day in baseball history? And is that one of the better days in baseball history in some ways?
Oh, for sure. And I think it was great, as you kind of summed up, that Ryan kind of steals Ricky's thunder there to a certain degree, and made deservedly so. And Nolan Ryan's one of those guys. Both of them are kind of self-made ball players. I mean, Ricky comes out of the ghetto in Oakland and actually was a very good football player. And, he's one of the first guys I ever really interviewed in baseball. And he was certainly the first athlete I ever ran into that talked about himself in third person. Whereas, Ricky's feeling a little tired today, and Ricky's hamstring. And I'm going, who's he talking about? Oh, he's talking about himself. Whereas Nolan Ryan, I was able to spend some time with him with a previous book, High Heat, where I went in search of the fastest pitchers of all time. And one of the things I love about Ryan, and he hasn't forgotten it, and I think we saw a bit of it in this day, May 1st of 1991, whereas Ricky goes over the top, and breaking Brock's record and what he had to say, Ryan has never forgotten how close he came not to being even in the major leagues. One of the things that when he and I have talked over the years and he's come back to it repeatedly, and it surprises me, is how close he came to quitting the game, Ryan. And I have asked him why, and he said, in part because I knew I'd been given this gift of being able to pitch, or in a sense, throw a baseball very, very fast with high velocity, and I wasn't doing right by it. And if anything, that trade, when he's traded from the Mets out to the Angels, pretty much for, a pack of beans, so to speak, and Jim Fregosi, I guess, and he feels that turned around his career. And one of the things that I'm stunned by is Gil Hodges, who was then the manager of the Mets. They talked to him right after that deal was made, after the 69 season. And Hodges, who was a great baseball guy, said pretty much, well, I guess of all the good young pitchers I've got on my team, the Mets, and he had great ones. I mean, he had Seaver and Koosman and McGraw. I guess Nolan Ryan is the one I can most afford to lose. And that's really kind of indicative of what the Mets organization, felt about Ryan. And he got out with the Angels, got a regular spot in the rotation. They fixed up his mechanics, and whoosh, he became the guy who pitches 7 no-hitters. And unlike other individuals, I think, in the national pastime, Ryan's never forgotten it. How lucky he was not to, in a sense, either have quit or, in a sense, have been cut from the Mets. And I think it was indicative of what we saw in 91 on that day.
My uncle, by marriage's sister, is Jerry Koosman's mother.
Really? That's wild.
Yeah, and I ran it. I was at my cousin's house. I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago. Ran into Jerry because he was there. Him and one of my cousins are really close. And just to touch on those kind of the miracle Mets team, if we have to look back, and obviously Koosman did pretty well in '69 for the Mets. And obviously, I know Jerry's not going to be the best pitcher, but who was the best pitcher on the Miracle Mets when history writes itself? Is it Nolan or is it Tom Seaver?
Oh, it's Seaver at that point. And in fact, in some of it, Seaver came pretty much to the major leagues as a finished product, almost. Ryan, as I said, was a diamond in the rough, and there's an episode that Ryan talks about. At one point, he's sitting in the dugout. I don't know, and in a sense, Walter Johnson's name comes up on the scoreboard. Either he or Seaver are pitching well. Maybe it's during the playoffs in '69 where Ryan has put up all those scoreless innings in relief, and Seaver just says to Ryan, "Congratulations, that's great company you're with." The great Walter Johnson, the big train. And Ryan didn't know who Walter Johnson was. And so at that point in time. And so, there is kind of the difference between those two guys. One, obviously Seaver, college educated, coming, rapidly through the minors. Nolan Ryan struggling and such.
Another thing that happened in '91, I noticed that you point out in the book, is Brien Taylor being the number 1 overall pick by the Yankees. And can you tell his story a little bit? Because I find it interesting because I actually was in a kind of like a Stratomatic league. You familiar with Stratomatic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was in a Stratomatic league, and we did minor leagues, and I ended up having Brien Taylor, and then saw that go down the Pichadu, as the Italians would say.
That was unfortunate for you.
Yeah, it was.
Brien Taylor, top draft pick in '91 of the New York Yankees, and pretty much the preeminent pick. Pitcher, could really throw. High schooler. Everybody thought sky's the limit for this guy. He was represented in a sense by Scott Boras. In '91, we start to see kind of the role of super agents, pretty much personified by Scott Boras, who was representing a number of guys who did make it, Steve Avery being one, who was kind of a left-handed Sandy Koufax in the '91 playoffs for the Braves. Well, the short of it is Taylor never makes it. He becomes, he gets injured in a bar fight. He becomes kind of this cautionary tale of how you think you've got something, especially with a high school player coming into your organization, and pretty soon, we'll just project out he'll be a star. Taylor never really made the team. And it's funny that the Yankees were the team that kind of got sold down the river on this, because some folks in the Yankee organization on the verge of drafting Taylor were kind of going, well, I'm not sure, maybe we could go with somebody else. And at this point in time, George Steinbrenner had been exiled from baseball for collecting, in a sense, gossip or, stuff he could use against Dave Winfield. And all of a sudden he went public a couple days before, in a sense, the signing deadline. Is Taylor going to sign with the Yankees? They've drafted him. Or if they don't, by this point, he'll go play college ball. And Boras, of course, is leveraging this to the max, saying, pay this exorbitant amount. I've forgotten how much it was, but it was a lot at that point. And, or Taylor go play college. And Steinbrenner, 48 hours before the signing deadline, said, I may have been, out of the picture. I may have been banished for X amount of time. But if the Yankees somehow don't find a way to sign Taylor, heads will roll. People will be fired when I return. So, of course, they sign him for this huge amount of money, and the kid never plays in the major league. So it's funny, because '91 is this point in time, TC, where money starts to really ratchet and warp things. One of the things I couldn't believe in doing the research for Down to the Last Pitch was the Oakland Athletics had one of the highest team payrolls in the sport in 1991. And about 10 years later, they would become the poster child for Moneyball and how, small markets can't compete, and it's going down between the haves and the have-nots. And it's kind of this really strange deal. Money's getting bigger. You've got major agents like Boras stepping in. Managers are getting fired. The most managers of any season were fired in 1991. The stakes are going up all over the place. And it's really kind of where the game's gone. It was kind of fun to go back to 91 and just go, ooh, here's the clues, here's the telltale signs, and this is where potentially it's going to go over the cliff, especially when it comes down to money.
Yeah, it seems like that was kind of the start of the whole, regional Fox Sports stuff, and Yes, and Nesson and Masson and all of this other stuff out there. And yeah, it's definitely. And
it was a way, in a sense, for teams that were maybe out of the so-called bigger cities to regionalize and compete. And if not, I think things would be even more dire than perhaps they are now. And it's interesting that, these huge broadcasting empires have formed. It's almost kind of a pushback to the fact of, wow, there's George Steinbrenner paying a huge amount of money for a kid that will never even play in the major leagues, and somebody like Brien Taylor. And the game has really, really jumped. I mean, just thinking about it, the Oakland A's team payroll was a whopping $35 million approximately in 1991. You can see where we've gone through the roof on that.
Yeah, baseball's a good sport to play these days. I remember the great story of Larry Bird, signing like a $3 million contract, and some reporter asked him, what do you say to the guy making minimum wage down at the grocery store? And Larry Bird says, I'd tell him to learn how to shoot baskets.
That's right. Or learn how to be a left-handed reliever, or a left-handed pitcher and pitch like Mr. Taylor, but don't get in bar fights and hurt your shoulder.
Or be a lefty like Charlie Leibrandt. Is there regret in Atlanta from Bobby Cox or anybody else on bringing in Leibrandt to face Puckett on that fateful at bat in Game 6?
Yes, and then it's Leibrandt kind of pops up throughout the 7-game series, and he must have had a kick me sign on the hanging on the back of him or something. And it's funny, I was talking with Jim Cott, who's one of the last interviews I did for the great Twins pitcher and now broadcaster, for Down to the Last Pitch, and he made a point that I hadn't quite thought about, and he was absolutely right. He said, if the Braves had, well, gosh, give them a closer like Rivera or Dennis Eckersley, who's like the cream of the crop in this period of time in baseball, or even give them somebody who's like a Rick Aguilera, who is very good for the Twins at this point in time, too. In essence, give them a bona fide closer. They probably win at least 2, maybe 3 of those World Series they end up in the 90s. Because, the Braves after this, if losing in 91 seems to have ticked them off in some way. I mean, they came back on a mission in 92 and make the playoffs 13 consecutive seasons. They got kind of a mulligan in 94 with the labor debacle and the World Series being canceled because they hadn't really made it. But they make this incredible run, 14 consecutive seasons starting in 91, but they only really won World Series. And as Cott points out, I think accurately, you give them a good closer, then in essence, they win more. And they kind of thought they had one in 91 with Wohlers, Matt Wohlers. But he ended up with the same kind of thing as Steve Sachs and even Chuck Knobloch later in his career. He couldn't throw the ball accurately, in a sense, to a base. And they started to see this happen a little bit. Lee Mazzoni, the great pitching coach for the Braves, when all of a sudden Wohlers was having a problem throwing the ball to first base. It was all over the place. And Mazzoni's going, I'm worried. He's sitting next to Bobby Cox in the dugout. And Cox is going, it's all right. He doesn't allow that many base runners. We'll tell him not even to throw over. He'll just stare at him or something. And Mazzoni's going, no, this can be like a virus. This could be contagious. And before you know it, he couldn't throw the ball over the plate. And pretty much his career was over.
The book is Down to the Last Pitch, How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and Atlanta Braves Gave Us the Best World Series of All Time. You can find Tim on his website at timwendel.com for more information about the book and his other 10 books, including Summer of '68, the season when baseball in America changed forever. You are the best, buddy boy, and I appreciate the time.
My pleasure, TC. Enjoyed it.
All right, let's wrap it up. Once again, you can find the show on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. It's also available in Stitcher and in the app called Swell. And then, of course, you can find the show at sportsnaut.com, the unfiltered podcast to love, baby. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's tc@sportsnaut.com. This was actually part 1 of 2 with Tim. I had such a good time talking to Tim. I thought the content was beyond sexy. So I'm going to bust this up into 2 wonderful shows. So you got the first show today. And then I'm going to go with May 1st, since May 1st is my birthday. And, hey, who doesn't love talking about the 91 World Series on your birthday? We're going to run part 2 of the show with Tim on May 1st. So you got that going for you. And, of course, the book is Down to the Last Pitch, baby, available on Amazon.com, probably Barnes & Noble as well, yes, of course. And then any competent bookseller that you can find out there, and there's quite a few of them still for the most part. I wonder how many books in total Amazon sells. I wonder if they're like 50% of the market now. It's interesting. Maybe I should have asked. Maybe I should ask Tim that. Hey, really quick here, a couple of show notes before we jump out of here. How's baseball looking these days? We're full on into baseball, and I love talking about baseball. And my Marlins, who I predicted would make the playoffs, They got off to a great start, and they're not looking so good right now. Things are getting tough there. I think they need. I think they need to move to a 4-man rotation, which they're not going to do because most of the management in baseball these days are just so scared, and what's going to end up with Tommy John surgery? You know what's causing Tommy John surgery, in my humble opinion? It's the smartphones. I tell you what, I used to go play catch with the missus a lot. We were great, man. I was like Kent Herbeck. And she was like Ronnie Gant, and we'd have some fun and out there on the base. Well, that's another story unto itself. But she was like maybe like Greg Gagne making the throw from short, basically. And I was Scoop. I was Kent Herbeck, and boom, But now, when I go out and try to throw after having an iPhone for like the last 4 years, finally did the plunge about 4 years ago and went with the iPhone. I'd waited up until then because I'm not a big cell phone fan. But what I've noticed is that holding the phone and using it, especially with my, holding it in my left hand and using it with my right hand, my elbow is always tweaked. And then if I take the phone into the bedroom and lie down, I tend to be looking at my phone lying on my back with the phone in the air and my arm in the air. And a dollar to a dime that Steve Jobs, as wonderful and as intelligent and as innovative of a guy as he was, is causing more Tommy John surgeries. That is my fearless prediction, because when I go to throw now, man, I can't. It's tough, man. My arm just tightens up, and I think I need Tommy John surgery, and I'm not even a pitcher. It's the damn smartphone. So what do you think of that action? Am I crazy? No, I'm not. I'm right about this. Trust me. We need somebody to dig into this, do some research, and you're going to find that Major League Baseball players, in addition to being wound so damn tight because they work out all the time now, we need more David Wells. We need more Prince Fielders. These are the guys that go out there and play every day. Look at CC Sabathia. His first start, K-Poots. He was terrible. He loses all the weight. What are you thinking, CC, buddy boy? You and me, we're going to hit the buffet. That's all I got to say there. But, yeah, you find out some information on this stuff, and I think you're going to find that, the smartphone and the tablets are causing more Tommy John surgery in players. I bet you 9 out of 10 of those guys, I use my smartphone or my tablet a lot, so we need to get back to the old 286 computers, the huge monitors and the desktops, and everybody will be fine there. Carpal tunnel, no, it never hurt the baseball players. But, hey, the iPhone, that can do some serious damage. So there you go. But, yeah, so baseball so far has been pretty darn good. My Twins are, 6-6 as they hit Toronto later today, and it's my thing with the Twins, and I love myself some Twins. Good grammar I have is that when they play the AL Central the last 3 years, they're pretty good against them, and I guess the last about 10 years they're really good against the AL Central. When they play anybody else except for the Astros, maybe, they're not so good. So the Blue Jays coming to town, Twins probably get swept again or lose 2 out of 3. We shall see. Jose Bautista, man, that guy's a monster. So far my early season predictions of the Yankees, who did I pick in the Central? Did I pick Detroit? I think I reluctantly. No, I picked Kansas City. Oof, Kansas City. They're looking tough. Seattle I picked, and then I picked, I think, Tampa Bay and the Angels maybe I picked. I'm not sure if I picked the Angels. I don't remember that. So some of those picks are not looking so good. Though Seattle's looking pretty good. The Marlins, as I talked about, no, not so good. The Phillies, I picked them. And then also the Nationals, the Cardinals, and then the Giants. My Giants pick is looking sexy. I do believe it is looking very sexy. So Dodgers aren't going to make the playoffs this year. Look at Clayton Kershaw. Probably using the iPhone or the iPad too damn much. That's what happens. All right. Let's wrap it up, man. Let's wrap it up. I think we're there, man. Of course, sportsnaut.com is the website. TC at riffing on, not riffing on, at TC at sportsnaut.com if you want to check out the big show. and then shoot me an email, and yeah, that's about it. So there you go. Let's get some more Marky Mark going here as we come out of the big show. Once again, thanks to Tim. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim_Wendel, TimWendel.com, and the book Down to the Last Pitch. Make sure you buy a copy. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the emergency room.